Thank you for joining us today, Shri Priyaji and Dr. Deepa. We're going to delve into Vedanta and yoga because these are two things very, very dear to me, and they've been responsible for a lot of the changes that I have seen within myself. So, thank you for being here again. So, Dr. Shri Priyaji, I will start with you. Can you explain to me briefly, or to all of us, what is Vedanta and why is it relevant?
Yes. So Vedanta is the. I hold this.
Yeah. Can you hear us, Shri Priyaji?
Am I audible?
Yeah.
No.
You need to put it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's on.
Vedanta is the what we call the science of happiness. It is the essence of Vedic wisdom that teaches us about ourselves. And so it really is the science of knowing oneself. It is eternally relevant. It's not just applicable to a particular place, particular time, because it speaks to us about who we are. And although society might have changed and the external conditions that we live in might have changed since the Vedas were first revealed, human nature is essentially the same. And if we think about a lot of the sort of trials and tribulations, the challenges that we face, particularly in modern life, a lot of these challenges are because we are disconnected. We're not connected to ourselves, we're not connected to the people around us. We're not connected to anything higher or nobler than our own, personal concerns. And that's the reason that we find life so challenging very often. Vedanta is the means for us to learn more about ourselves, but also to connect to something that inspires us, and something that can guide us in facing all of these challenges that come our way in life. So to summarize, Vedanta is the science of happiness, and it introduces us to ourselves in an authentic, meaningful way.
Wonderful. And why is it relevant?
It's relevant because we need to know ourselves. Like I said, the reason that we feel that life is difficult very often is because we're so disconnected. And Vedanta is that which connects us to the world around us and to ourselves. It actually is, it's the simplest thing. Because to learn about something other than yourself, you need to try. Right? You need to try when you're at school or university learning about things in the world. But to know oneself is actually just to let go of all distractions and to recognize what has always been there and will always be there. It is the most relevant thing for each and every one of us, especially now in the world that we live in.
Thank you. Thank you. And you're right. I think it is the interconnect. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I think the connection that we've lost with each other then causes a lot of the issues, like we were talking earlier with Radhika from NDTV. It's that connection which sparks our feeling of belonging. Dr. Deepa, I want to ask you about yoga. So, we all have our own version of yoga. We've all got our own definition of yoga. And that's amazing. It's amazing that it's something that's so personal to us. What would you say yoga is? Because it's so much more than just asanas and just pranayams.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Now this is where I'm going to joke and ask, can I please borrow your next at least 7 lifetimes to explain what yoga is? Because it's just not about yoga as a science, but even Vedanta philosophy. All of these are basic philosophies that actually have helped us to get on with our lives, be it our practical lives or our philosophical lives. So, of course, as you've said, the way people do talk about yoga is that, yes, it is that kind of science or something that will help to bring back balance in your body, mind, and soul. Absolutely agreed, it does, but that is more on a practical level. When you look into yoga as a philosophy itself, the best way I can explain yoga is it's a science of movement. So when people come to me asking, okay fine, what is yoga? I usually say it is moving meditation, meaning you move from that point of view that you're going to be meditating, but again from the point of view that you're going to be bringing back balance into our lives. So yes, yoga, if I have to explain, will take me a lot of time, but bringing it back to being practical. The way I would talk about yoga is that yoga on its own may not necessarily help all of us. It is always in combination of these other sciences, which we will be talking about in a moment, and that is Ayurveda or Jyotish. Of course, in this time today, we're not talking about Vastu, but I'm a big believer of Vastu. So it's all about bringing all these other philosophical sciences together. So ultimately, just like Ayurveda, Jyotish, yoga is also a holistic science where we are looking into just not our bodies, our mind or soul, as it is more philosophical or spiritual, but it is our environment too. So really looking into that environment and how we can change that. So that's the first thing, very basic. Remember, yoga is science of movement or moving meditation. The moment you take these two words, these two phrases away with you, even if you have to walk down the road, you are actually practicing yoga. Because what is yoga? What is life? I can call someone as living or someone life as life is only when they are breathing. If one does not breathe, there is no life. That is exactly what yoga is. It is how you breathe, but how you react in each breath. Yoga is just not what we do for ourselves, but yoga is also what your reactions are going to be for the environment around you. And I do talk a lot. As you can see, breath work. I'm practicing my breath work. Okay, so that's the most basic about what I will talk about.
And that's really interesting. That yoga is the science, and I mean you're saying it's movement, it's moving meditation. And I guess if we took life like that, if we took everything like a moving meditation, then wouldn't life be very different from what it is today?
Yes, absolutely, it would be, and that is where we also then talk about, be it in Ayurveda, yoga or Vedic sciences, that we have got two aspects of our everyday living. One is our mind and the other one is our bodies. You will see that there is always this conversation between our mind and body on a daily basis. At the end of the day, you will come back home and the body says, I'm really tired, I need to go to sleep. But then no, the mind comes along and says, no, you can't sleep now because you still need to send those emails out. You need to send or clean your kitchen or do something else. Meaning there is always that conversation between our mind and our body. Once that conversation between the mind and the body is more free-flowing, whereby they are listening to each other and following elements accordingly, as you've said, life becomes a moving meditation.
So that nicely gets me to what I wanted to ask you, Shri Priyaji. You said Vedanta is the science of happiness. So would you say if we practice Vedanta, we would be away from all the stress and anxiety that we're experiencing? And how would that, how can we reach a state of peace where, like we were talking earlier, 4 million people were treated last year in the UK for mental illness. There's so much stress. What would you suggest people do at a practical level in their houses?
So I think when you think about sort of people's experience of stress and anxiety, the first question is, where are we experiencing these things? So of course we experience stress and anxiety in our body, but really it's taking place in our mind. Right? That's where we're having these thoughts. And what Vedanta does is it teaches us how to deal with our own mind. There are a lot of things we learn throughout our life. We learn how to we learn how to do taxes. We learn how to open a bank account. We learn how to cook for ourselves. We learn how to talk to people. We learn how to speak publicly. Nobody ever really teaches us how to deal with our own mind. And that's what Vedanta does. And when we learn how to do that, then we are not victims to the experiences of our mind. We're not victims to those thoughts of stress and anxiety. We are able to manage them, and we are able to dispel those thoughts, not by suppressing them or ignoring them, but by dealing with them and facing them head on. A very, very practical, simple thing that Vedanta offers us in this regard is teaching you'll find in the Bhagavad Gita, you'll find in other Vedantic texts. A lot of the time, stress and anxiety comes because we are pulled out of the present. So we're worrying about something that's happened in the past, we're anxious about something that's going to happen in the future, and sometimes even if we're not in the past or the future, we're in the present, but we're so agitated or excited in the present that we can't really be fully aware of what's going on around us. So one of the simplest teachings of Vedanta is to let go of regrets of the past, to let go of hopes and anxieties for the future, and to be fully present here and now. One of the teachings of Swami Chinmayananda, the founder of Chinmaya Mission, it's so simple, but it really encapsulates this point. He says, keep your mind where your hands are working. And if we think about how much of our day we spend doing something physically and thinking about something else, it's astonishing, right? When you come to actually recognize that your mind is so often just wandering on a completely different tangent. When we learn to deal with our own mind, we learn to live in the present. And that in itself is such a powerful tool to reduce stress and anxiety and to help us really live joyfully in the present. The result being that we are much more efficient, much more productive, but we're also just happier and more fulfilled in everything that we do.
Lovely. And for those of you who don't know, Sri Priyaji's father has been my Vedanta guru. And I went to him with the same issue. I said to him, how do I stay in the present because my mind is always wandering? And he said, 4 times a day, come back to your breath. He said, you don't need to do any pranayams, you don't need to learn any techniques, just focus on your breath for 5 minutes, 4 times a day. And when I'm going through a tough phase in my life, I still do that. Dr. Deepa, I want to ask you about actually using yoga and the way people know about yoga techniques to A, prevent exhaustion and burnout, which is a result of exhaustion, and also to reach a happier place within themselves. So no matter what religion, what culture, what place people come from, how can they use yoga to help them with that?
Yes, now using, of course, you talked about exhaustion and burnout. This is where I'm going to combine yoga a tiny bit with Ayurveda because that is the best way that we can understand that combination. Understand, whenever we say burnout or exhaustion, it is nothing but there's this excess heat in the body. And whenever we have this excess heat or fire in the body, it starts drying out all the tissues. So in yoga or Ayurveda, we usually call it as a dry heat imbalance. And both in yoga and Ayurveda, we have said that whenever that fire gets really strong in the body, and if it does not get food to eat, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about food after, it will start burning the tissues in the body. And hence, the first most important thing about the body itself is to nourish the body. So nourishment from all kinds. It's just not food. Understand, in today's environment, nourishment just doesn't come through food. Unfortunately, our environment, as we say, age of darkness, Kali, food has become kind of a point of over-nourishment. So we actually need that nourishment from other elements like our sensory but love-related nourishment through connections, through speech, through communication. So that is one way of looking into nourishing our body. But coming to very practical tips, talking about practice, as we said, practical tips earlier, and we were talking about this earlier, do understand that all our sciences, be it Ayurveda, Yoga, Vastu, Jyotish, these are great knowledges. And we always say that knowledge is great, knowledge is bliss, knowledge is everything, and it is eternal. But it is of no use if you can't put it into practice. So again, coming back to yoga philosophy and its practices and making it practical, do understand that the whole world will say, yes, get onto your mat and do your sun salutations, do your breathing exercises, do your half spinal twist, do your forward bend, and that will hopefully help to get rid of that exhaustion or tiredness. In reality, Ayurveda and yoga say, no, don't think about all of that because that is too much movement. It may once again create heat in the body. And of course, going back to the basic of getting rid of that dry heat. So all these tips that I'm going to give, I know I've got quite a few of my students out there who are going to be coming today. I'm sure that this will take you back to those times of writing down for like 6-7 hours every day. 3 very simple tips. Do understand that whenever heat or that burnout kind of thing gets accumulated in the body, it gets accumulated in all what we call as marma points or energy points, or you can even call them chakras, or yogically we call them granthis. These are certain knots in the body. And you have no idea that how the joints, all our joints are marimas, where when heat gets accumulated, then if you don't do anything about it, it will lead towards aging. And one other thing is the easiest way of getting rid of heat from marimas in the body is literally like joint exercise. It can be ankle joint movement, knee joint, shoulder joint, wrist joint, literally. But do remember, whenever doing that, stand up and do it. Yes, you can watch your TV, you can multitask if you want to. If you think you can't get those 10 minutes, or I always tell all my clients, there is no excuse to have those 10 minutes for yourself. And the first time when you do it, you will see that you will feel kind of tired or exhausted, almost as you've run for at least a mile. You will feel hot and you will start sweating. And that is important, because that is how the body gets rid of all that excess heat, which may be leading to burnout or exhaustion. So simple joint exercises every day, and of course after that maybe you can have a warm shower. It may not be yoga on the mat, but do remember it is still yoga because it is science of movement. That's the first thing. Another very important thing to remember is that whenever we say that we feel tired or exhausted, we never feel tired or exhausted in my ankle, in my knee, in my chest, or in my tummy. It is always in our head. It is always in this head and neck region. People who've talked about chronic fatigue or malinating encephalitis or anything like that, you feel it from the head and neck region. And both in Ayurveda and Yoga, we give this part a lot of importance. But the most important part in this region is our eyes. Do understand, our eyes are nothing but an extension of the brain through the optic nerve. And beautifully in yoga, we have got this practice of Tratak meditation or candlelight meditation. Do understand, whenever fire burns, it always burns upwards. That is how it burns. That means even in the body, whenever there's excess heat, all that heat kind of rises up to the head and neck region and gets accumulated around the eyes. And it's interesting, why do we have this saying in modern language, so to speak? Your eyes are the window to your mind, so to speak, but over here, it is also a window to your head. And a simple technique is candlelight meditation. Just have a candle flame in front of you, at an arm's length, at the same level as your eyes, but then focus on the candle flame, trying not to blink. It will be very difficult in the beginning because you've never done it. But then, as you're doing it, your eyes will start watering. Then close your eyes for a few moments and again open up your eyes. In that way, the body is getting rid of all the heat from the head and neck region, and you will be amazed. This simple technique will help with so many different ailments. So the second important bit, and the third one I'm sure the Ayurvedic panel will talk about, is all about food. Food is so, so important to actually help get rid of many different illnesses and diseases. And as we say in Ayurveda and Yoga, it is all about following what we call as sattvic foods, or we also say ojas, that is immune strengthening foods. And when I say that, do bear in mind, these foods are never bland, are never not tasty. The most tasty foods you will ever find are sattvic foods or ojas strengthening foods.
Thank you.
You see, I speak like an express train. I'm very aware of the time.
Thank you very much. No, that was fascinating. I love how you made this connection between the heat going up and exhaustion and burnout. I didn't know that, so thank you for that. Sri Priyaji, I want to ask you, before we sort of go on to questions and all, I want you to give us one takeaway from Vedanta that everyone here can practice. Again, doesn't matter what religion they're from, doesn't matter, what nationality they're from.
I think that one of the most empowering things that Vedanta teaches us is that everything that you are seeking is already with you. We spend so much of our life looking to the external world and looking to people around us, situations, to fulfill something within us, to kind of fill this lack that we seem to be feeling all the time. And what Vedanta teaches us is that actually everything that we are seeking is already with us, it's already available to us. And all the limitations that we feel are holding us back the limitations that we feel, whether externally or internally, are stopping us from experiencing that fullness, they are imagined. They're not real. And we can be whatever we seek, but ultimately we already are what we are seeking. We are seeking peace, we are seeking fulfillment. Vedanta teaches us that actually we already are that. All we need to do is learn how to allow those limitations to drop away, to recognize that they are only relative, and that who we are is enough. Who we are is exactly what we need and what we want in life. The path to get there may seem long, and it may seem like it needs work, but the ultimate truth of Vedanta is just that simple. That whatever you seek is already within you.
Which reminds me of my favorite quote from Rumi, which also is so relevant to Vedanta. I'm not a drop in the ocean, I'm the entire ocean in a drop. So we're everything. And Dr. Deepa, what I want you to leave us with before, again, we go on to questions, is, you know how yoga is very personal to each one of us. So we have our own yoga, which like I said, and it's such a part. If you ask anyone here, someone in their family would be into yoga. Can you tell us something that you think most people will not know about yoga, something different?
Well, there are a lot of many things probably about yoga or yoga practice or yoga philosophy that many people don't know. Because when we talk about yoga, people are always thinking about your asanas, your Surya Namaskar, Chandra Namaskar, or Pranayam. Yes, absolutely, that is yoga, but that is more of the physical side. And of course, talking about yoga, which not many people know, but something that will actually help to bear in mind anti-aging. In all our Vedic sciences, we do give this term anti-aging a lot of importance. And when I say anti-aging, I don't mean that it is something very kind of physical or something from the outside, but it is also something from the inside. So when we talk about anti-aging or rasayana, that is what we say in Ayurveda, do bear in mind, it's first of all, in this age of Kali, our aim is to live for 100 years. There is no excuse. I usually tell all my students, all my clients, in December I will be 51, so 51 is done. I've got another 49 to go, but I'm striving on it. So do bear in mind, when we say anti-aging, it is just not the quantity or the number of years you've lived, but the quality. Quality is very, very important. And putting these two together, that is only when we can call something life. And a very simple example is that, yes, someone may have lived for 100 years, but out of those 100 years, if they spent like 50, 60 years in a wheelchair, there was no quality of life. So it is also about understanding as to how you combine quantity with quality. And of course, something that about yoga not many people may know or actually even think about is our 5 sensory functions. And this is where I say that because we live in England and we've got this one road or motorway going up from south to north, and that is M1. So if I'm thinking of going to Manchester, I'll say Birmingham because I know Dr. Varalakshmi is here. Everyone's thinking about M1. I don't think about M1. I'm thinking about M11. I'm thinking about A1M. I'm thinking about M40, meaning I'm thinking about all these other routes to get to the other side because that is how you will get there fastest. And I also joke saying probably you might even get to see some nice scenery too. Likewise, whenever we talk about yoga, just don't think about asanas, your breathing, but think about your 5 sensory functions because it is only through these 5 sensory functions that we actually create experiences or of course, enjoy experiences or also make memories. It's you've got visual memory, you've got hearing memory. Maybe if you were to go back 15, 20 years ago, you'd be like, oh yes, I tasted something, that memory of that taste. So it is these 5 sensory functions that are actually keeping us healthy and alive. So on a daily basis, and do bear in mind, looking after the 5 sensory functions is also part of what is called as Shatakriyas or Shatakarmas. That is the 6 actions towards cleansing of the body. And many of those do fall under these 5 sensory functions. So something as simple as Pratak meditation, as I said earlier, the candlelight meditation for the eyes. Of course, for the nose, yes, we do have breathing exercises, but along with that, also think about things like Neti, Jalanethi, nasal wash. So that really helps to stimulate and strengthen your brain. Do bear in mind, the reason why people say they get old is because they have started to forget things. The more you remember things, you will never say that I'm getting old. The other bit, the reason why we say we're getting old is because once upon a time I could get up four flights of stairs without any problem. And I'm going to finish off just a second. Sorry. And now probably they have not. So it was all about anti-aging, and the best way that you can do that is through the 5 sensory functions. Coming about the taste, of course, food we will be talking about, and of course, touch is what we call as snehana, that is love, but over here is also about, like marma therapy and so on. Lastly, through ears is hearing nice things. So I hope that now you've heard some nice things from us too.
Thank you. And,
Thank you.
And all the speakers will be available after the chat downstairs while we have tea and snacks to have more, to ask you more questions. Now I'd like to open up for questions from the audience. I did receive a few, but I'd rather people ask themselves. So are there any questions? One of our speakers, Anju, would like to ask a question.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Hi. I was wondering, to both of you, perhaps, but I don't know how it works with Vedanta, but how do you keep your memory sharp? Because I do feel that I forget things that I would have not forgotten so easily.
That's a very good question.
5
would
years
have asked that
ago.
if you
So,
hadn't.
how do we keep our memories sharp?
There's a very, very, very simple and easy Ayurvedic stroke yogic remedy, and that is writing down for 15 minutes every day.
Wow.
And I promise you, it works. And I do understand in today's day and age, we very quickly call it journaling. I come from India. Bear in mind, my language is not that simple or basic, or how can I call it? That local, so to speak. So whenever we have to write down anything, literally thinking aloud on paper. Do bear in mind, if this is something I have told my students, that if you were to only hear or listen something, you can retain only 15% of what you have read or heard. But if you were to read, hear, but write down the same thing at the same time, you retain 65% of what you've read, heard, and written down. Last thing, and now you will know why in our Vedic philosophy we sing mantras loudly. Read, hear, write down, but say the same thing loudly. You will retain 95% of what you have read, heard, written, and said aloud. But very important, whenever I say write down, it's not typing on your laptop or your mobiles, but literally pen on paper. Because in that way you're using motor functions, but you're thinking. That means you're using your sensory functions too. And hence it is that combination between your sensory functions, brain, and motor functions actually help enhance your brain.
Wow. And even schools are allowing laptops now. Yes, we have time for one more question, I think. Any more questions? Tina.
Can you please share an example how yoga has transformed someone's life?
How yoga is transformed?
Someone's life.
How can it transform your life? Do bear in mind, yoga, as I said earlier, is not what we do for ourselves, but what we can do for others too. So I understand, as I've said earlier, we are in the age of Kali. We are in the age of darkness for a reason. Yes, I understand that at the moment yoga has become, I've heard many people, quote unquote, not my words, others, it has become an acrobatic session. Because everything is about physical activity, physical movement. But to understand, if I were to literally zoom out from where we are now to make Earth really small, it makes sense why we have become so much into that physical movement and activity, because that is what the age of darkness or Kali is all about. So yes, it has been believed that, I'll just go back 2 steps behind. I'm sure we all talk about fasting, intermittent fasting. When we talk about fasting nowadays, we are always thinking about not eating food or abstaining from food. We're just thinking about this bit over here, our mind. Food is everything nowadays. You will see that when people want to celebrate, they want to go out and have food. When they are stressed, they are like, oh, let me eat food. I'm depressed, I want to eat food. I've got nothing to do, I'm getting bored, let me eat food. So yes, food has become that kind of a thing. But the reason why I'm talking about food itself in terms of a weakness, it can be a nourishing point, but a weakness is also because when we're talking about the yoga practice and how it can evolve, once upon a time fasting was not about abstaining from food, but abstaining your 5 sensory functions from external desires. Meaning, I see something, if I see something bad going on, I should not hear and shout. I need to be calm and react accordingly. So for us, fasting is how you control your five sensory functions. But then yoga philosophy has said that now we've come into this age whereby we can't even control our body. How can we control our mind or our five sensory functions? And hence it is all about asanas, and rightly so. Start off with asana and you can always develop forward from there.
Thank you for that. I have one very quick question for you, which someone had sent me yesterday, who couldn't be here today. They wanted to know about how can Vedanta help them with sleep. They're having insomnia issues.
So again, I think learning to deal with our mind. One very simple thing is a quote by Swami Tejamananda from Chinmay, who says that the softest pillow is a clean conscience.
Oh, wow.
The thing that keeps us up at night is mind is churning, there's so much going on. If we learn to live in a way where at the end of the day